I bet those glasses make you see better.
It's me off a lot because I'm thinking, like, how do you know this? Like, just constantly numbers everywhere.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just part and parcel of being informed. So, anyway, the point.
Okay, wait, I'm
go
back.
ahead.
I did just look it up. So apparently, poor white children are less likely to attend high poverty schools versus poor black children. So about, actually, I'll send the link. It's I think
Actually, I agree with this. I'm not even going to
so.
dispute it.
Black
It
children that are poor are likely to like, as in they are on like free lunch programs.
Sure.
81.1% of them will attend high poverty schools, whereas white children who are at the same socioeconomic status will attend high poverty schools at about 53.5%. So
Agreed.
Again, we see like a disparity there where
You still have the same problem, though. All you do is just take it one step further, right? So, okay. But out of the white children who go and are in the poverty situations on par in the poverty schools with the other students who are not white, you should still see similar rates, and you still don't. This is the problem.
Do you have a study for this by any chance?
You can just Google that too. Actually, the social disparity. So this is a very well studied phenomenon. Now, I think that the reason for this, one thing that I would point to, because I'm sure that you're thinking in your head that this is somehow a racialist view. It's still not. Mm-hmm. I think it has to do with intact family units. So especially in the black community, where it's almost a centralized thing now to have fatherless homes. And when I go back in time,
why that is?
Well, hang on. When I go back in time and I look at the early 1900s and I look at black communities when they had intact father homes, you did not have the same issues inside those communities you do now.
Right. Do you know why there is a disparity in intact family homes?
For what? For black people?
Yes.
For
like,
black
do you know
people?
why there's a difference?
Yeah, I think it's because Margaret Sanger and a whole lot of people infiltrated black churches and began the divisive message for progressivism. And then later, especially under, I think it was Nixon, this got wider when blacks used to be basically all Republicans. It still are very social conservative. And you see this deviation divide from basically Sanger on as it started with the black churches, though. And that was basically what she said she was going to do, was that she was going to utilize black churches.
More likely that maybe like mass incarceration is kind of an issue?
It didn't used to be an issue.
Mass incarceration, mm-hmm. When do you think that began?
The mass incarceration of blacks specifically, you start from like the late 60s on is when you really started to see that. Especially when the crack epidemic started happening, that really exploded incarceration rates. But it was not always the case, right? They did always go to jail at a higher rate. That's true. But maybe you would expect to see that from socioeconomic conditions, right? But ultimately, the idea here is, why is it so overwhelmingly lopsided? It's because any place you look where there's fatherless homes, you see the same types of behavior, regardless of the color of the children. Almost universally, this is true.
Right. So if a specific community is being subjected to, mass incarceration at a greater rate than another community, and people are locked in a cycle of this, I mean, then you would see the difference that you are observing, correct? So it is not like a fundamental difference.
That would be a correlation for the root, right? So what's the root? What's the root for why black people are incarcerated so much more? Progressives claim racism. I claim that that's stupid. I don't think it's racist that a guy's stealing your TV and he gets locked up, or it's racist that a guy murders somebody else and so they get locked up.
For the same crimes, black people are far more likely to serve time.
They're more likely to serve more time. Not time, but more time. If that's the case, white people are still going to jail for crimes, right? It seems to me that not committing crimes equals not going to jail. That seems to be the universal. Like, for instance, Asians, right, don't commit a lot of crimes, and so they don't go to jail. very often because they just don't commit crimes, right?
They haven't been subjected to the same kind of, I think, systematic disenfranchisement as Black
The
Americans
Asian,
have. Not to the same degree. It's a different scenario.
yeah, maybe.
Would
But
you
the
agree
thing
that
is,
it's a
yeah,
different scenario?
yeah, but the thing is like we have a historic standard we can go off of for Black America, especially under Martin Luther King, who was a Republican, by the way. Most Black people were Republicans in this era. Yeah, look it up. Martin Luther King was a Republican, yes.
He was not a Republican. His father
Yes, he
was.
was. Yes, he
Martin
was.
Luther King Jr. Avoided formal affiliation with either the Democratic or Republican Party.
Bullshit. He did not. That's not true.
Well, I just looked it up.
He was pretty noted actually as being a Republican.
The official answer is neither.
Neither. Yeah, he was.
So
he was very much. Very much. And by the way, blacks were always in the Republican camp. They switched basically under Nixon, I think, if I remember correctly.
Well, I mean, I don't know much to comment about that.
Yeah, but anyway, but yeah, the point is like, look, these
also
guys.
The Republicans and Democrats, did they not switch platforms?
No, they didn't completely switch platforms. You're talking.
Wasn't that because Republicans were the party of Lincoln, correct?
Still are the party of Lincoln, this grand old party.
Right, but there was like a difference. There was a switch.
Yeah, so
it was like somewhat. People in my chat are saying that they switched platforms around the time of.
They didn't completely switch. They didn't completely switch platforms. That's nonsense. Mm-hmm. So the thing is like that can be traced to one newspaper article, by the way, that made that claim. Mm-hmm. They didn't completely switch. No, it is true that Republicans have become much more of inclined towards the grassroots of America, whereas Democrats used to be more towards the grassroots of America. They used to be the protectionists and things like this. There are some things that they have switched on. I grant that is true, but they didn't switch completely. Not only that, the main thing to focus on, though, is what changed inside of this community. What was the biggest change that happened when you used to have some of the most conservative people on planet Earth in the Black community, and they're not anymore? It's because of the change in having a matriarchal versus a patriarchal social system, meaning Black women now run the home and not Black men because Black men are not present.
Well, that's also kind of, I mean, that's a complicated history, but that's also kind of a thing that has to do with, continued disenfranchisement and poverty. And again, mass incarceration. Like, of course, women are going to be the breadwinners if the men
but I would argue that the mass incarceration happens for the same reason that it happens under children of single moms who are not Black. Their rates greatly increase for incarceration as well. I don't think it's the cause of mass incarceration that causes fatherless homes, but rather is the cause of fatherless homes that led to mass incarceration. That's my argument. That's the way that I would view it.
Disagree entirely. I mean,
show me the timeline.
The timeline of fatherless homes
in the Black community. Yeah. When did it become? And by the way, you can actually look at the same timeline with white communities. You can look at the same exact timeline. You can look at the same exact outcomes for whites who grow up in fatherless homes. They have terrible outcomes, and it's an ever increasing rates of terrible outcomes for these people.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh, sorry.
Would you
say that there's other factors, like if they live in poverty, inner city, rural, suburbia? Like, are there other factors that incorporate into that statistically?
Yeah, of course. There's also look. I would never argue that, especially post Civil War, there was not significant disadvantages for Blacks, especially in the South. This is well known. Mm-hmm. Nobody's going to ever make the claim otherwise unless they're just completely historically illiterate, or that racism didn't exist towards Blacks, especially in the South and even in the North. It definitely did, and this is post-Civil War, and that it takes a long time for a culture to catch up. I'm not even disputing that. What I am disputing is that the progressive ideology, which moved in and cut off the idea of the Black American father from his children, is what led to the crippling of the Black community and mass incarcerations, not mass incarcerations leading to fatherless homes. That's absurd. And the historic standard does not support that.
Well, I mean, why would fathers just leave is the thing. I mean, I'll grant you that it is likely a complex issue, but I do think that blaming it primarily on cultural issues is incorrect, because
It started with the church.
Fathers
I'm
are.
going to tell you. I'll tell you the history. It started with the church, and it started with the infiltration of feminism into the church. You can look up a famous Margaret Sanger quote. What her entire plan was to send various birth control advocates into especially black churches because she wanted to kill black people. Now, the people dispute this.
Oh, this is the Planned Parenthood woman. Yeah.
Yeah, they say
I'm aware of this history.
Yeah, they say no. Hey, no, she didn't. Okay, but you can look up her quote on Aboriginals and what she said about Aboriginals, which was that Aboriginals were the lowest form of life on planet Earth. That's what she believed.
So
she called them
birth
something akin to
control
weeds.
But birth control would lead to
It's
less
not the birth
births.
control. It's the division in the church. Patriarchy starts with the church. The idea of having a head of household who's a man is a spiritual concept, much more than it's a negation of much more than it's a material concept. The idea for progressives is that men and women are interchangeable widgets, and that women are just as capable of being the head of household as men, right? The idea of the spiritual concept of this was destroyed inside of the black community.
Well, I think if we both agree that like historically black people were not allowed to live in the same areas and were kind of relegated to poorer areas intentionally, and if women up until somewhat recently had less opportunities to make money, then yes, like a single black mother family household is going to be poorer and thus, be more likely to raise children that may engage in crime, because poverty correlates with crime. And crime correlates with poverty. It's the same thing. People typically commit crimes because they are poor.
So what does that have to do with fatherless homes?
So if a father goes to jail and is thus, making a home fatherless because he's in jail,
then you'd have to show that the incarceration rates, right, are what led to the fatherlessness, not the fatherlessness leading to the incarceration rates. That's the problem that you have here.
Yeah, I feel like if you have any further reading on this, I would just be
all you have to do is
curious.
Look at the early 20th century prison stats and what you saw in the disparity, the crime disparity. It's true that there was still a crime disparity, but it's nothing at all like it is today. It's not even in the same universe. Okay, these places, these big automotive capitals like Chicago, things like that, these places were not always war zones. Detroit was not always a war zone. Chicago was not always a war zone. There were not always just 20 fucking people getting shot per weekend in these black areas.
I mean,
that's a reasonably and relatively new phenomenon.
The end of segregation, which led to higher policing, and I think more aggressive and higher policing leads to more crime and aggression, doesn't it?
Yeah, maybe, but whether or not you can give me correlates for what would explain the disparity in criminal activity between blacks and whites in the early 20th century, it would not negate the fact that the overwhelming explosion of black culture and fatherlessness, that would not give a descriptor for that. The amount incarcerated does not reflect the amount of fatherless homes from the non-incarcerated. So we would have to have some different reason for that.
Is there it's the same level of fatherlessness amongst incarcerated and poor and incarcerated fathers versus employed black fathers?
It's higher. So the idea here is it's actually higher.
Employed non-felon fathers, black fathers with jobs.
I don't understand what you're asking me. Let me make sure I understand what you're asking me here.
What is the difference in fatherlessness when in black families when the father grew up again has like a job and hasn't been incarcerated versus incarcerated and doesn't have a job?
Yeah, but this goes back to my point. I would even grant this, but that black person likely had a father at home. That's the thing. That's how we can trace this back, right? So if the idea here is this, right now, if you look at single motherhood by choice in the black community, meaning they get knocked up, right, by just a boyfriend, unmarried, this type of thing, that is choosing that life, right?
I mean, I think like yes, but I think that you'd also
Yes.
have to look at who is knocking them up, because there's some fathers that you would not want around, correct?
Who's making that choice?
Well, the woman who get pregnant,
Yeah.
which is why I advocate.
It's
for
not
abortion.
unilateral. It's not a unilateral thing, right? The woman is
Mhm.
making the choice to get pregnant by these men. If that's the case, the woman's making the choice to get pregnant by these men, but not choosing to have the father there, right?
Mhm.
That leads
Well, I
to
mean,
these
does
disparities in
fatherlessness
outcomes.
begin immediately, or does it happen over time? Because it's
Mostly
my
happens
understanding that-
immediately. So now we're just talking about unmarried women who have children out of wedlock, who their boyfriend isn't living with them. The rates in the black community are sky high for this. Sky
where
high.
they have the child and the father is not in the life from the beginning.
Yes, from the beginning.
Okay, I would again. I am curious. I would like to see some links on this, because I feel like this is a complex issue,
Hmm.
and I think that boiling it down to culture is kind of
Yeah, you want an external reason. But the thing is like education is not going to be able to give you the external reason, because the disparities there are not easily explained unless you use a racial paradigm, which is why so many people do. I don't use a racial paradigm. I think it's silly.
Mhm.
And I think that descriptors in society are much easier to come across by behavioral standards. If I look at what happens to white people and Asian people and every other dynamic, if they're raised in a fatherless home, the outcome is completely negative in comparison to children who are raised in a home with a father. So if you have one community where the fatherlessness rates is higher than any other community, why would I not correlate that as being a primary issue? I
mean,
would,
yeah,
right?
it is absolutely an issue, but I think that the issue is more external than cultural. I mean, I think that
You
they
just
have.
think that they're getting locked up and that's why they're fatherless, but that's not the case.
I mean,
It's not the case that it's because they're getting locked up that they're fatherless. Like, that would not account for how many black women are single mothers based on the incarceration rates of black men. It just wouldn't account for how many of
well,
them are
it's not
single
just
mothers.
incarceration, but again, I think it is like just, frankly, significant setbacks compared to white and Asian communities.
What setbacks prevent you from being a dad?
I would say economic setbacks, more incentivization to
That just means
join
you
gangs
can't.
and get involved in crime.
What? But that leads back to incarceration. Like, what would stop you if you're not incarcerated from being a part of your child's life? What?
I mean, wouldn't
Because those rates are still sky high.
is it not true that families that make more money are more likely to be intact versus families that make very little money?
Marriages, yes. But
Marriages? Okay.
well, usually because there's a correlation between money and education, and highly educated people tend to stay together for longer. That's true.
Right. So if people, like, again, don't have the same access to education and are going to, schools in shitty areas that are poor,
Then we should see the same
Then
rates
I-
of poor people having the same amounts of fatherless homes. We don't see it with Hispanics. We don't see it with other groups. We see it with this specific group.
I think
this
Hispanics
specific
are
group
different
was
because of the Catholic influence.
because the culture, exactly.
The Catholic
You're talking
influence.
about, and that's cultural, right?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, so you're just
But
making the same
our
argument that I
whiteness-
am, that this is a cultural, that these are cultural things, and it's the cultural things that develop into the ideas of fatherless homes. Remember I told you at the beginning, patriarchal systems are spiritual. They start with the spiritual, right? You point to a high rate of fathered homes and point to the same thing I am. They're Catholic. I would point to the same exact thing and say, yeah, this is a spiritual idea. And that is one of the things which keeps those families intact, right?
Right. But it's also, I think, relates back to the capacity for Hispanic fathers to take care of their families. Whereas I feel like black
Which
men have
is
not been afforded
cultural.
the same, opportunity. I mean, I don't think that we can deny that
When
black
black people
men are-
used to be much more Christian in Christian churches, they had the same cultural influence Hispanics did, where they had a push from the community to take care of their children. Who wrecked all that? Well, you guys did. You progressives did. The anti-religious
I don't
did.
know if Margaret Sanger could be considered a progressive if she was extremely racist.
What? Listen, you think that being a progressive excludes you from racialism? I don't think so. And not only that,
I mean, I think that we would. I don't think it's socially progressive to be racist.
so let's say that you had every single progressive ideology in your head plus racist. You're not a progressive anymore. So
I'm sorry,
does the
could you
only
repeat that?
thing, well, if it is the case that the only thing that makes you progressive is not being racist, then I'm a progressive and Sarah's a progressive and my chat's
Oh no,
progressive and
I
everyone's
would
progressive.
differentiate between socially and fiscally progressive ideas.
Okay, so then you could be a progressive and be racist then, right?
I think you could be fiscally progressive and racist. Sure.
Why couldn't you be socially progressive? So if I had every social idea you had plus racism, I'm not a progressive.
I mean, I think that views are a bit more complex than that. But if someone was very much super racist to the point of being like, we need less black people in the world, they need to reproduce less. I mean, that's pretty severe. Would you not agree? And mind you, I do understand that the roots of the feminist movement in the U.S. are fairly white supremacist in nature. And so
Hang
while
on,
they were in
I
some
wanted to
ways,
give you real quick these stats.
okay,
The average black man in the United States risks a 20 to 28% chance of incarceration at some point in their life.
okay,
The rate of out-of-wedlock births in the black community in America is 70%, and the percentage of black children living without their biological father at home is estimated to be at 50%. Now let's look at the incarceration rate again, 28%, 70% of fatherless homes. Black children living without their biological fathers estimated to be at least 50%, and the ones who are born out of wedlock at 70%. So there's no, incarceration rates cannot account for this phenomenon.
but then we talked about how this is again like there's a root to it here.
Yes.
Like, I don't think again.
What could the root be other than the culture?
Well,
What could
can
it
also
even be?
Economic. I mean, culture does not just.
Well,
it's not
if
as again.
if
I
it's
think that-
economic, then why aren't Hispanics in the same rate of fatherlessness? They have similar rates of economic disparity. In fact, sometimes worse so. How could that
well,
be?
again, it's because the factors impacting Hispanics versus Black people were different in American history.
What about right now?
At this very moment, I
Yeah.
would say yes. It's generally many Hispanics are immigrating from very, very, very again culturally conservative nations,
religious.
but are also again not.
So how come we can't account for the same thing in religion then when it comes to black people? When they were heavily religious, they were not engaging in the same rates of fatherless behavior, same as Hispanics. Doesn't that seem like the strongest correlation we can make here? Like, could you even come up with anything stronger that would correlate?
I do believe that the Black family unit has been intentionally disrupted.
By progressives.
I wouldn't say by progressives. I mean,
Well, they're the ones who are. Aren't they the ones trying to eliminate religion?
That got the frickin' crack and shit into Black communities.
Yeah, they're not the only community which has ever had an introduction to an intoxicant like opium, which heavily affected heavily affected not just whites, but Asians as well. Right? Mm-hmm. They're not the only disaffected group which has ever had an introduction of a drug which had a crippling effect, and then as a group got past that. That crack is not the epidemic now that it used to be, and would not explain in any way, shape, or form the huge disparity between incarceration and fatherless homes as an explanation. And this is why I've always been baffled by this. I can literally track for you exactly when it is that progressives began to move into black churches in order to remove the idea of the patriarchal system, which is what all black communities literally thrived on. That was how all of their communities worked. They were all patriarchal systems. The black men took no shit from anybody, let me tell you. If you go back and you read how early black families and their dynamics were, black men weren't taking any shit from nobody. Fucking
So, out
nobody.
of curiosity, it does seem that Black Americans tend to report higher levels of religious involvement compared to white Americans. How can we, explain the disparity then? If it
Yeah.
is,
So
if it is from
this
the,
is actually really simple.
mhm.
Can anybody self-ID as being a Christian?
Certainly yes, but I do
So
think
what would
in
make you a
general,
Christian?
probably believing in the Christian God.
Is that it? Like if somebody said, I believe in the Christian God, but all the concepts of Christian ethics I reject, would you consider them to be Christians?
So, would you want to look at church attendance?
Not just church attendance, but your participation in sacraments, your participation in the church community, your participation inside of Christian ethics themselves. Just a simple
So,
self-ID
Black
is not going
Americans
to cut
do
it here.
tend to attend religious services more frequently than white Americans. So it's 47% versus 34%,
Uh-huh.
which is, again, so Black people go to church more than white people, which means that they're most likely more affiliated
Men or women.
with religious
Men or women.
communities. I'm going to look at men or women.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just in general. Black women tend to report higher levels of religious commitment than Black men, but this is also the same for white women. So
Uh-huh.
across races, women tend to be more religious than men.
Uh-huh. So it is the case that inside of the Black community, that if we adjust for gender, or in this case sex, right? If we adjust for sex, then we see it's mostly Black women who are attending like liberation churches, and they're attending non-traditional churches and things like this, because those are the more appealing churches to women. The LGBTQ flag hanging churches are the more appealing ones to Protestant women. The men tend to go to the more traditional churches, creating an even wider divide. So it is the case, actually, that it's Black women who are going to these churches more often than the Black men. Therefore, that again, the idea of traditional patriarchy gone, right? Whereas if you're talking about Catholics, they go as a family. It's going to be mommy and daddy. Not the case when it comes to the Black community. And you pointed out something there that's actually key when it comes to white people. It's the same thing here. You see a disparity in traditional church attendance between white men and white women. White women do go to church more, that's true, but what kinds of churches do they go to? That's the key.
I'm fairly certain that because I have this statistic thrown in my face all the time as far as my support of racial justice goes. But are socially conservative attitudes not more common amongst Black Americans than they are amongst white Americans?
Yes. So it is true that especially Black men
Tend to be more traditionally
they
conservative.
tend to be more
right.
socially conservative, but only here. Not when it comes to voting and voting patterns.
No,
They
right,
tend
but, like,
they tend to
socially
mostly
conservative
only be
ideas.
socially
Yes.
conservative when it comes to homosexuality and immigration. That's it.
Yes.
Yeah, especially homosexuality. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I agree. It's still not cool to be an undercover brother. Okay, it's still not cool to be an undercover
Right.
brother.
Yeah.
But the thing is like, so what? The family dynamic of Black America has been completely eviscerated, and we can easily track this back from progressive ideology into modernity. I'm not taking away any of the arguments of racialism, which came from whites, especially in the early 20th century and even in the mid 20th century.
I mean, do you
What I
think it
am
might have
taking
something
away
to
is the
do with
idea
the private
that
prison system again?
No, I think it has to do with the fact that progressives do everything to promote alternative family structures than the idea of mommy, daddy, children, cross-generational or nuclear families. Progressives do everything possible to destroy that unit. And it has been the most detrimental thing to blacks. It is now becoming the most detrimental thing to whites. Just look at this. Just humor me with one thing.
With you, I'm kind of
Okay, go
someone
ahead.
that I feel like, I suppose, cultural arguments are less interesting to me. What
But they're
I'm
the
more
most
interested in
important.
is looking at where money, you know,
Yeah, but don't
where
you?
is where is money going to and from? And
Yeah,
so
but
when
money,
we
when we
when
look
we
at
have,
education, is huge, right?
when we have a country in which the private prison system and labor from private prisons is kind of integral to our economy, like it would make sense that they would want as many people possible locked up, correct? Like would it not follow that we would
I'll even
want
grant it. I'll even grant it.
a specific
Sure.
population perhaps?
I'll grant the entire thing. It does
Okay.
nothing to negate what I'm saying here. Even if it's the case that prison industries and private prisons who operate on a model of private capital per inmate, right, were influencing politicians for laws which disproportionately affected minorities. I'm willing to even grant that that is the case, and it still doesn't explain this disparity, not even close. And that's my problem. That's the issue. It's like the difference, I think, when I'm talking to you is that I can grant your worldview and it just affirms mine. But if you grant mine, it destroys yours. And that's the problem, right? It's like I'm willing to engage in the
Do you
entirety.
think that economic, like socioeconomic standards can determine culture? Because again, I do feel like this is something that
I think
was
culture determines
initially external.
I think
that was then
culture's I
became
think it's the
cultural.
opposite. I think it's the opposite, that culture determines the decadence of socioeconomic policy anyway. I think culture is what influences the political process for the things that you're talking about and the injustices in the financial communities, which didn't even used to exist. Even things like usury. Like here, I'll grant you an easy one. Payday loan centers and things like that, super hyper predatory, especially towards blacks, towards Hispanics, and towards minorities in this nation. It's so over the top hyper predatory. I think that those people should be pulled out of those payday loan places, publicly tarred and fucking feathered. That's how bad that is. Okay. Do I think that that sort of decadence can exist though? If you had a culture, which was a moral culture, I do not. No, I don't think so.
Do you think that perhaps, so for instance, when my ancestors came to America, they pretty immediately had the opportunity to build up ancestral wealth. Now, a
No,
Black
they came-
American
then they
would
came
not
here
have
with
had
wealth.
no, they came here poor.
Okay,
But what I
how
mean
did they
is
get
that
here?
versus enslaved individuals.
How did your ancestors get here?
Who is going by boat? Who is going to have a better opportunity to build wealth? Someone who is enslaved or someone who can work?
Yeah, but I'll
For money.
I'll even grant this.
Okay, grant me that.
So it could be the case, and is the case likely that the black community, right, had like 50 or 60 or 70 or even 80, maybe even 100 years of recovery from the social distinctions which were made financially between the disparity of them and white people. It still wouldn't account for this. There's plenty of poor countries where the fathers are intact. There's plenty of them, including Hispanic
I don't think
nations.
that we ever got a 40 acres and a mule. So what we had after the end of slavery was that
how does that
Black
account for
people
this?
never got their reparations.
Yeah,
and then
how does
were
that account for
subjected
this
to-
though? How does that
to
account
segregation? How does this account for that? What I mean
Yeah,
is
how
that
does it
you
account
have
for it?
Okay, if we are granting that crime correlates with poverty and a lack of education, right?
I'm willing to grant all of that, but
Okay,
how does that give an
cool.
accounting for in modernity the rampant disassociation and the destruction of the black family, when it used to be that they were even poorer than they are now, but the fathers were still there? I need an accounting for that.
I'm gonna need to see like
I just read you the stats, but you can pull up the graph right now. Just look at fatherless black homes, 1900 to present, and tell me what the stats say yourself.
to poverty rates in Black.
No, not
community.
poverty rates. No. Fatherless black homes, 1900, 2025. And tell me what they are.
Let's do.
And while she's looking that up, I'll maybe go 5 more minutes if you guys wanted to, and then we could open the panel up for some further conversation if you want. If you guys want to stay with this, it's your show.
I do have one thing before we get onto.
Can you read me the stat though?
So I will say for poverty, at least, Black people have a record low of poverty
Record
rate.
low.
They're record low, which is
Yep.
good. That's good.
That's good, but
This
they're
was-
still in the worst fatherless
Uh-huh.
homes in history. So tell me, what was the father rate in the early 1900s to now? Any graph will do. In fact, just do it easy. Fatherless rate, Black homes, 1980s to present. Just do that.
Sure. Okay. Fatherless home rates, Black families, 20th century. Okay, yes, it was after the 1960s.
Yes, it was after the 1960s. And we have the lowest poverty rate for blacks, like you just said, that we've ever had. So your worldview does not account for this phenomenon. Do you see? Do you see what I'm saying? And do you see why I think progressivism is so poisonous?
There can be, economic and external factors that can impact culture.
You mean the economic factors that they're doing better than they've ever done ever in history, and yet still they're at the most
1950s and the 1960s.
Yeah, but they were listen, if they're doing worse financially in the 1950s, but there's still more fathers in the home, how could that account for that?
I think conservative morals of the time.
Yes.
I suppose.
There we go. Yes, I agree. Because of conservative morals at the time, which would be heavily religiously oriented. And what I'm trying to show you is that as the progressives have made the push for secularism, as they've made the push for all lifestyles are equal, the very communities they're trying to protect, you guys have destroyed. You've destroyed them with this. Completely and utterly
I didn't
destroyed them.
do anything. However, it does seem like fatherlessness by all races and ethnicities has increased.
Agreed. And what else has increased? Secularism. The number one correlate between the idea of the moral prism being completely relative
it was
or
a lot
not.
easier to get divorced. I think that also helped.
Yeah, and who pushed that?
Well, women. I think that's
secularist women.
That's a net gain.
How is this a better society? Like, how could you ever think that the society in which you progressives have built is better? Like, this society in which now you can get divorced whenever you want, there's no social duties, no social obligations, has led to complete and total fatherlessness in black homes. It's leading to fatherlessness in white homes. It's leading to like these dire, horrible outcomes. Even though you get your GDP is higher, poverty is lower, but the family unit's destroyed. Like, how did this do any good for us?
I would say as the I grew up in a motherless home, due to divorce, and I would say that was really good. That was a lot
How do you
better
know?
than
How do you
my
know?
family staying together.
How do you
my
know?
parents.
I mean, you're not. The
Not
thing
without,
is like,
not without going too deeply into my family.
look, it's
history,
anecdotal
I would
anyway.
say that
It's anecdotal anyway. But here's the thing: the number one
single
rates.
father homes do really well, don't they? Actually,
Yes, they do. Do you know why though?
they do. They do great.
Do you
I
know
think
why they
because
do
men
well?
can make more money,
No.
and I also think that
No.
men are less vulnerable than women, whereas I think women are more likely.
It's because of strange men. It's because single moms bring strange men around and they abuse the kids. That's why.
Yeah, I'm absolutely inclined to agree.
Yeah. So how
Yeah.
do you solve that problem?
How do we solve the problem of?
How do you solve the
women
problem of
bringing,
single mothers bringing strange men around and abusing their kids? How would you adjust for that? What would be the thing that we could point to that was going on before that solved that problem that we no longer have?
Well, I think that we would have to do something about men's tendency to, rape.
Oh, it's
abuse,
men's
and
fault.
assault.
Oh, it's men's fault.
Well, I mean, like you are capable. I mean, surely you would agree that the majority of perpetrators of like child sexual assault and rape in general are male, correct?
No.
Well, that's true. It's like a 90%.
No, it's not. It's not true. It depends on classification. So when I look into these stats, here's what I see. I see that they will say things like non-penetrative sex is not considered rape. That they say that things which would be considered assault by men are not considered assault by women. I do not agree with this, and I can even give you my proofs, right? Here's some of the great proofs that I have for this. Let's start with this idea of sexual assault, right? Or what is considered the category of the R word, right? What is the R word? What would you consider R word to be?
I mean, I don't really differentiate between. I do believe that when people say rape, they typically do mean penetrative assault with either a phallus or some sort of phallic object.
So do you see how it could be that so many women, even though I have stat after stat I can show you, when in college where men have reported that they've been assaulted at much higher rates by women than women by men, they declassify them because it's non-penetrative. Do I still consider that to be the R word? I sure do. Just like you would.
I'm inclined to agree.
So I don't believe that these. I think that
however,
the stats by Rain and these things, they're all categorically.
I've also never seen stats like that. I mean,
have you ever looked? Have you ever actually tell me this? Have you ever?
I have actually done a lot of research on.
Where did you look? Where did you look? That was not a progressive think tank. Where did you look? Anywhere that was not a progressive think tank. Yes, I can. I want you to go right now to Honey Badger Radio, and on that Twitter account, I will send you the link as I have it bookmarked. I will show you study after study after study, which shows that they changed the categories of what the R word actually is when it comes to men versus women for non-penetrative. That's one. Two, the fact of the matter is that men, when they're assaulted, let me give you an easy example. If a man is sitting at a party and a strange woman comes over and starts rubbing his arm or rubbing his shoulders, that's not considered SA, nor do they report it as SA, but women will. There's massive category differences here. And if you were to adjust for the reporting and everything which was considered SA on the opposite side, you would find out that, no, I don't believe that men are these hyper predators. I've always thought that was bullshit feminist talking points based on categorization in order for feminists to play the perpetual victim. Now,
so
let me pull these stats up. Hang on.
As was primarily involved in gay communities throughout my lifetime, and has dated probably an equal amount of men and women. I'm not saying that women cannot be predatory because I have experienced that. However, in terms of the degrees of danger and how likely men are to offend versus women, I will say that it is much more likely for men to offend.
Yeah, I don't believe it.
Men are okay. Do you have a daughter?
Yeah.
Are you more comfortable leaving her with a strange adult man or a strange adult woman?
Generally speaking, I'm not comfortable leaving her with anybody.
Okay, but if you had to choose. If you had to choose,
I mean, it would depend. Like if it was my best friend who was a male, I wouldn't give a shit. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah.
That wouldn't be of concern with me. Now, you said a stranger, right? Generally speaking, I probably would default towards a woman. That's true.
Okay.
But however, even if intuitively I might think this or be socially conditioned to this, it doesn't actually mean that their risk would go up even if I intuitively would do this thing. Do you see how that works?
It is statistically more likely for men to. I mean, I will look at your sources because, again, I'm actually a significant. I have been a witness against a female rapist. Victim was male. I have gone to bat for this, and I care about this quite a bit. I do think that male victims of sexual assault, when the perpetrator is female, are not taken seriously, and I don't like that. So this is not me being against that, but I do think it is statistically more likely for men.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it's only statistically
and assault.
Yeah, and I can send you these stats. You can find them. They're posted by Honey Badger Radio. Great source of information, by the way. It goes through all of these. So we can start. This would be ResearchGate Net publication 33 through publication 37. Actually, yeah, I can send all of these to you. So it turns out that when we make adjustments for categorization, this is not at all as cut and dry as it's made to sound, and men are not. And here's the thing. I can actually give you a logical demonstration for this that I think that you would agree with. Do you agree that women generally are much weaker than men and so in a much more vulnerable position towards male aggression than the opposition?
Yeah.
Okay, so then you would agree with me then that men themselves are in a position where women are generally vulnerable in comparison to them.
Yes.
And so that you would agree naturally then that men could assault them because they're in that vulnerable position if they so chose to. And so that's likely the explanation for why that happens, because it's not like women can defend themselves against that, right?
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
I would agree.
Yeah, so that makes sense to me. That's a great argument. The problem that I have is like when women are in charge of the infirm or they're in positions of authority, they kill their children. They literally kill their own children. And they also, when they're in charge at like prisons and things like this with inmates, they're far more likely as a percentage to assault them. They're far more likely as a percentage when they're in a position of power to do horrible things to the infirm than men. So when the positions are reversed, in other words, if we make an adjustment for a strength differential, meaning now in comparison to me and you, I'm stronger than you. But in comparison to you and a 9-year-old, you're much stronger. When in the position of then them being the infirm and weaker ones, you guys assault at way higher rates. And I could just point to something easy like abortion. It's that simple. It's like when you're in charge of the people, those who are infirm and the children, and when you're in charge of those types of people, you kill them far more often than men do.
You're referring to abortion?
Yeah. That's right.
Okay. All right. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I feel like you're going to have a hard time convincing most people of this argument that women are far more likely to rape and assault than
That's
men
not
are.
what my argument is. What's my argument? My argument is this: that if you adjust women in the position of them then being the stronger sex, they assault more than men do. And we know this because we have them in the positions of the infirm versus men, and they assault them way more often and kill them way more often, especially than men in the same position. That's right.
Okay. Do you have sources for that? Because yes,
yes,
aware
I
that
just
women do
told
make
you
up
what
the
they were.
majority
You could
of-
go to read.
Okay.
I will, and I'll
Could you
send them
post
to you.
in the chat, please? Because I would like to see these because
Yeah. So hang on. I'm
think
going to
that this
DM
is-
these over to Sarah, and she can put them in the chat for you.
All right.
And you
all
can see
right.
these statistics for yourself. You can read through them right now live if you'd like to.
Sure.
It's not nearly as soon as you start changing around categories, as soon as you start changing the semantics, which you guys hate so much, you start to realize, wait a second, this is not as cut and dry as we thought it was. This 90, you really think that 90% of sexual assaults are done by men? Like, you honestly believe that? Even intuitively, you believe that?
Yes.
Yes, of course.
But that's based on my experiences, again, growing up as a woman.
Here, Sarah, I DM this to you, this link. If you can post it in the college, or I'm sorry, in the private chat. These would be multiple publications and multiple sources which give the demonstration, and I mean many, but I can back them up more with even more if you'd like. Because one thing that's interesting about this...
Because I think this is going to be hard for you because essentially all evidence disagrees with you when you look
up... No, it doesn't.
All perpetrators of violence, sexual or not. So this is a Twitter link that we have here.
Which links all of those publications you just asked for. Look at it.
Okay.
Oh, I see. The postings. 51% of college men report being essayed or AR'd since the age of 16, 95% by women.
Over and over and over again, we can see.
I mean, yes, that makes sense that college men are, being sexually assaulted by women more likely, heterosexual college men.
Well, that's really strange. I thought men were these violent perpetrators, and yet suddenly, what is the conditional change? College men are much stronger than college women. Therefore, college women would be in the position of vulnerability, and yet men still aren't assaulting them. That's really weird.
I mean, I think it's most likely by drugging and non-consensual groping.
So men aren't drugging women? Got it.
No, they are.
No, but the women are drugging them more.
43% of college men in high school youth report being sexually assaulted or raped. What would the statistics be for women comparatively?
It gives you the comparison inside of that study.
Okay, well, let me go look at these.
And then the second you begin to take them all into account, you realize that this is not even me trying to assault you. I just want you or insult you. I just want you to understand something that's very important here, right?
But
almost
just
everything that you believe from RAIN and these various groups is complete 100% semantic propaganda, which is perpetuated by a feminist worldview of classification. They use classification as a weapon. It's really easy. If I only describe rape as being something a man can do to a woman, then 100% of rape is done by men, isn't it?
Do you think
that's the problem with classifications like this?
That feminists created those definitions, or do you think that was
100% feminists in academia created it? Remember, who is in charge of the social sciences? Women. Who has all the degrees in social sciences? Women. Who comes up with the categorizations?
That's a legal definition.
Who comes up with the categorizations which inform the legal status of things? It's those people in academia. When you're talking about trans advocacy, they start, when they move into law, by sourcing psychologists, sociologists, and things like this in order to make the matter a matter of law. It's the same exact thing with rape. It's the same exact thing with all social phenomenons. Female academics come up with the categorizations, and we're supposed to just be like, well, okay then. Don't you think that that's really biased and like fucking horrible to do to men?
It's my understanding that historically, largely, the legal definition of rape came from a time before feminist movements, typically, because it would indicate that the property of a man, either his daughter or his wife, has been
that's historically inept. If this was the case, that it didn't come from feminists, then let me just ask you a simple question. If a man wakes his wife up with his penis, okay, and she's dead she's dead asleep, is he raping her?
I mean, I think that if they had not had a discussion,
no, they didn't have a discussion. It's their wedding night. It's their wedding night.
She's dead asleep, and he
wakes her up with that penis. He wakes her up with that penis. That's what he does.
I mean, yeah, I would consider that sexual assault, and same with.
And do you understand that is a categorization and classification for rape that's brand new? Do you understand that?
Yes, marital rape is new.
Yeah,
yes,
the way that you categorize. But do you now understand how important it is for these categories to be there? Like, I don't consider that rape. That's insane. If my wife wakes me up with a blowjob, it's not a fucking rape. Come on, how's that rape? Oh my God! No, stop!
But that's okay.
I don't think we've ever had that discussion. Why would we ever need to have that discussion? She's my property. She is owned by me.
Blanket consent there. I think that's fine.
How do you know it's blanket consent if we've never had the discussion?
Can I ask if presuming the wake up scenario, right? If you wake your wife up with full on ready to go and you just start sticking it in and going for it, and then if she says no, right? Like, then obviously, right, the consent is immediately removed.
No, not always. Like, here, I'll give you an example. It's the Bill Burr example, right? Oh, stop it. You're so bad. Knock it off. Oh, God. Stop. When they don't really mean stop. And you see how she has this look on her face like I'm speaking in a foreign fucking language as though she doesn't actually understand what I'm saying. When she does. She totally understands what I'm saying. And so does everybody else who's listening to me. Sex is a little bit mischievous, and sex is a little bit dynamic, and sex isn't always so cut and dry as like, you see this piece of paper right here under line 3? This means you can give me a blowjob between the hours of 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. and that's it. And if you don't sign right here, my consent will be revoked. That is not how interpersonal sexual dynamics work. And what always happens, hang on, let me finish, lady, let me finish. What always happens with these people is they give you the big eyes like they're stunned. You just said something stunning, Andrew. How could you say that when they totally fucking agree with you? Totally agree. Like, she knows sex is not so cut and dry as just no, because that can mean all kinds of shit. Depends on inflection. It depends on the intersexual dynamics. And you know what that is? That big look? That's called cope. It's the cope of the eyes, right? It's cope, pure cope. Just saying.
I think that you're kind of misrepresenting what marital rape laws are about. I don't think it's a playful blowjob from your wife. I think it's like the brutal rape of someone.
Oh, I think it's not. If we look at your categorizations, not only is it not that, but here's the biggest problem. The biggest problem is you can say in a court transcript, I said no. And the guy says, yeah, she did say no, but that's not what she meant. And we have no context for that because sex is a little bit mischievous and it's a little bit interpersonal, and it really depends on the person's interpersonal dynamics and what that means. Like, for instance, sometimes I like to go by my wife and give her a big, hard, open palm slap on the rear. And she's like, don't do that. She obviously wants me to not do it. I'm definitely going to do it again. And it's her distress that makes it so much fun to do, right? That's part of the, like, mischievous nature of the thing, right? Is that consent? Is she retracting consent? Well, I guess she is. But does that really matter ultimately? Is that really what's going on there? It's not so cut and dry as you feminists make it out to be, and we all know that that's the case. And so what's so bothersome about it is, like, you go, no, I think that marital rape is like the brutal penetration of your wife while she's screaming in agony. It's like, that's not what they report, though. What they report is like, one time I said no, and he went ahead and did it anyway, and we have no context for the interpersonal dynamic, and that's why categorization matters.
That is if you say no when someone keeps going, that is kind of that would be considered rape. I think. Oh,
okay. Well, I mean, it's happened to me multiple times then with my own wife, where she's like, she's a little randy at night, and I'm like, no, I don't really want to. No, honey, no, I don't really want to. Nah. Oh, okay. Well, actually, okay, that feels pretty good. Okay, we're gonna do this then.
I mean, so you see what I'm saying? What I mean when I'm talking about?
No, I don't know what you mean.
Like, implicit consent and
I don't know what you mean because it's not like that cut and dry.
Real life, like,
is that playfulness? I meant it. Like, I meant it. I really didn't want to right then. And then, well, she talked me into it, okay, through touching that at that right at that exact moment I did not want. But after the touching occurred, I realized, actually, I do want this, and this is great.
Hey, man, I'm not going to lie. I don't know if I'm super into the idea of helping you determine whether you or your wife are raping each other or not.
That's not the point. The point
like,
isn't
I'm
whether.
I'm not like super into hearing about
do you
your
understand?
Guys' sex life,
do you understand
like,
the point of
categorization?
Like, it's just an obfuscation. You're just obfuscating. You're just obfuscating, man. Like, my point is to show you that just based on normal human sexual dynamics, women like you will categorize things as rape that aren't. That's my point. Not whether or not Chuck over here thinks I'm raping my wife or she's raping me. It's to give you an easy contrast of normal human interactions and sexual dynamics that you can easily construe as being rape that aren't.
Assumptions. You are making some assumptions about me right now that, you just said it. If someone tickles me and I go, hee, stop, do I think I am being... If a friend or a boyfriend or a girlfriend, whoever tickles me and I go, hee, stop, and they don't, do I think I am being assaulted or raped?
Maybe not. Obviously, but how does that read out on a court transcript?
Consent. I mean, man, I don't know. I have never tried to take anyone to court for, tickling and giggling and silly stuff. And I'm
but
not
you
can
you engage?
I don't.
With the hypothetical?
I do not know how we got here from you saying
because
that
I'm trying
women
to
are
express
mega rapists. Like, holy
that's
mother
not what
God.
That's not what happened. Like, all you're doing is trolling now because you have no answer to this. Human sexuality is complex. And it's not so simple as you guys make it out to be. And when you make these kind of
I don't
crazy
make it out to be that, man. But I think when we talk about marital rape,
man, you do.
We are.
I don't think we do know because categorizations matter. And if ever one time a woman has said no to her husband, right, and he admits that in court, she said no, but that's not a big deal. Like, there's a whole interpersonal thing you don't understand here. They don't give a shit because they're going off of these categorizations. That's the point. And that's why it's so important. And you just go, I don't know, man. Like, I don't want to talk about your sex life stuff, though, dude. It's like, no, I'm using it
Can
to
you
draw an
cite
example
examples
parallel.
of a playful disagreement that
Hundreds,
ended in a marital rape
hundreds
case?
of them. In
All
fact,
right. Well,
hundreds.
I would have to see that.
Yeah, I know
I'm
but
not gonna
you've done a
lie,
lot
I
of in-depth research, haven't you? I've done tons of in-depth research, but
Yeah, and
I've never heard of a
never
case like
seen
that.
anything like no, I've seen false rape charges. Absolutely, I've seen those made, but I have never seen like lady playfully said he stop, and then guy was convicted of marital rape.
How would you know though? How would you know that that was the case? If it is the case, the categorization in court is that she said no, you admitted to, she said no, he didn't stop, even though that was against what their normal sexual dynamic is. And the court's like, well, now you're convicted. You could just point to it and say, no, he's a convicted rapist. He was convicted in the court of law. Even if the categorization makes no sense in this context, that's why it's so important. That's why. And you guys like this is why every time I talk to you guys about this stuff, somehow when we get to this point, there's like a complete shutdown on the other side. It's like all logic and reason and interpersonal dynamics goes out the window because you just want to be devoted to this stat that men are monsters, and we're just not.
I think that you are just I don't think that men are monsters by and large.
I think that if it is the case that they're responsible for 90% of the rapes, how could you say that it's not monstrous?
Thanks for watching. There is hope in Jesus Christ. He will never leave you or forsake you. Like and subscribe and join our Discord for friends and more.